Thanks, man. All right, awesome. Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming this evening. So as you can see, I look like that person on the screen. My name is Greg Smith, and I'm a senior product manager at Twitch. And today I'm really excited to talk to you about the 5 lessons learned in product management, or I guess maybe more is 5 of some of the mistakes that I've made in my career that I've learned from in product management, and I guess before product management. So just to kind of kick off what we're going to be talking about this evening, I'm going to talk about, I guess, Greg, and my role at Twitch, and a little bit more about what Twitch is. Actually, out of curiosity, has anybody heard of Twitch before? Oh, that's great. Okay, good. I was hoping that. All right, good. Our marketing is doing its job. The next thing, I'm going to talk about my path to product management. And the key here is that it was a very twisting and turning, convoluted path with many side quests and false starts, but eventually getting to where I am now. And then we're going to actually deep dive on 5 stories from that experience. And 5 stories that have 5 takeaways, not 5 each, but just 1 takeaway each, which hopefully can turn into actionable things that you yourself can use in your career as a product manager, or as some of the steps that you can take to become a product manager. All right, let's do this. Okay, so again, another picture of me. I think there have been like 2 or 3 pictures of me so far, which seems excessive, but this is me. It's me with my fiance, Emily. We live in San Francisco. More importantly, that is our dog. Her name is Lila. She is a Bernedoodle. She just pooped in our house today, and I had to clean it up this morning, which really sucked. So I'm like less of a fan of her right now, but that's her. And the big thing here is I work at Twitch. So for like maybe the 1 or 2 people who may not have heard what Twitch is a site that allows folks of all kinds to live stream themselves, performing a number of different activities to an audience of thousands, and create a shared real-time experience. Now, what we often stream the most right now is games. It's probably what we're most famous for, although we have diversified into a number of different content verticals, everything from creative to IRL streams. Even people cook, people sew, people make music. I think we even just announced that Doctor Who is now on Twitch. And if you've never watched or marathoned an old set of shows together on Twitch, it's a crazy experience. Like, I remember watching Bob Ross's The Joy of Painting. Like, this was a few years ago. And literally, the Twitch audience had turned it into this different experience where they essentially memed Bob Ross. And if you go to Twitch, the memes will be flying hard and fast. And really to support that, I've also peppered in various memes and GIFs into this presentation just to really make it feel authentic. Okay, and also, by the way, Drake is also down with Twitch. He recently started streaming on there with one of our big streamers named Ninja, playing a game called Fortnite. And that was a very special day for us, not just because we love Drake, but because we actually set our concurrency records for an individual channel. I think it was like 500,000 people were watching at once, which is pretty crazy, just on that one channel. I'm really glad our engineers made sure we had enough capacity in place. Okay, so one thing I do want to do is just really show one video here that I really feel like encapsulates what Twitch is. It's goofiness, it's meme-driven insanity. So hopefully the sound is not too loud, but let's see what this is. One of my other fellow product managers told me to put this in today, so let's see how it is. So, I mean, obviously our broadcasters come from all walks of life, and really use Twitch as a place to express themselves, not just playing games, but really being the individuals and creative people that they are. Yeah, no, I was super excited when this was shown to me. Awesome. But that is just a small sliver of what Twitch is like. Oh, do I have to click off this guy? Okay. So to dig into Twitch a little bit more, I thought I'd share a few numbers of what our engagement is like, and just to give you a bigger picture of the kind of reach that Twitch has. In 2017, some key stats to take away. We had 15 million or over 15 million DAU, as well as 2 million monthly broadcasters. But the thing that I'm most excited about are these 2 numbers. Our 27,000 partnered streamers, as well as our 150,000 affiliate streamers. And the reason why I'm so excited about those is those are the folks on Twitch who are actually making money. Because ultimately our mission is to empower creators to make a living entertaining and educating their fans. And really everything we do comes towards that. It's about enabling creators to build communities and build a living on it. And the thing, though, that I focus on specifically is not just Twitch and not just our broadcasters, but focusing on Twitch developers. So Twitch's experience with developers has kind of had a long and interesting history. Early on, I think we just kind of ignored them, but people loved Twitch so much and they wanted to improve our experience so much, they just started scraping our APIs and calling them and building tools and experiences on top of it. But in the kind of intervening years, we realized, hey, these folks are really valuable members of our community, and they're building amazing things that we just didn't even have the time to do or hadn't even thought of yet. So in the last few years, we've actually stepped up and built a much more focused developer experience team to focus on these creators and how we can support them, how we can give them new things to create, and how they can add value to the Twitch community. So my role specifically is I am a product manager on a product called Extensions, which essentially is, think of apps, but on Twitch. And I focus on building products that empower our developers to build rich, interactive experiences that can augment what creators are already doing on Twitch. And if you haven't heard of Extensions before, I'm going to show you a couple examples so you can get a sense of what's happening. Basically, the way you think of Extensions is they're web apps that live on a broadcaster's channel. This is us giving developers first-class real estate to build interactive experiences. In this case, we're watching someone play Hearthstone. But what's actually happening, that is a viewer mousing over the video itself, and we're able to dynamically pop up what cards the broadcaster is actually playing and giving more detail to the members of the audience. And what's really exciting about this is it allows the broadcaster to focus on being a great player and focus on talking about strategy, not what they're playing. And for someone in the audience, someone who maybe had never seen Hearthstone before, they suddenly have a new view into what's happening, and it makes the experience more accessible for everybody. Because at the end of the day, we want to welcome people to the community. And the cool thing was this was just a developer coming up with an idea as soon as we made Extensions available. And we're really excited by their creativity. Other folks have built things like full-on games that live on Twitch. Think of it as like an iPhone game, but living on the channel. That's another way to have a shared experience. Or in this case, is an overlay someone built for Destiny that showed the current weapons and experience and engrams that a broadcaster was using. And what was really special about that is, if any of you have played Destiny, it's really all about the loot. It's all about getting more loot and showing off your loot and just then getting more loot on top of that. And it's funny, when you would watch a Destiny stream, the conversations in chat was always, hey, yo, what gun is that? What gun is that? Because, you know, unless the inventory is up, you can't see that. But a developer built something that allowed the broadcast, or rather the audience, to get a deep picture into what was going on in the stream in a way that they never could before. And suddenly the conversation changed. It was like, oh, holy shit, you got this or this. And then it spun off all these interesting threads that brought people not only closer to the broadcaster and the channel, but closer to the underlying content. Now, one last one I want to show is, this is just a static image, but this is an early on extension that someone made, and it's kind of silly. It just allows the audience to click on the screen and generate a heat map, and everyone kind of works together to build a picture. Now, the first thing they built was a heart, and then 14 minutes later, they built a penis. So that was our time to penis metric. So, you know, we really like to empower all members of our community and really give them ways to express themselves. But we've seen a lot of really amazing growth. And ultimately, my goal is to continue to build tools and capabilities so our developers can build even more sophisticated experiences and really not be blocked by anything aside from their own imagination. And by the way, one of the things that we do to empower that is something that we call the Dev Rig, which is a product that we worked on recently. This is part of the developer's experience of going through and building and testing across all the different possible views and roles and things that can influence their extension. Cool thing here is we actually open source this. Amazon was kind enough to let us do that. And what makes me excited about that is by open sourcing it, we were able to allow the community to help contribute as well. So it's not just us building product for developers, it's developers building products for themselves and all of us working together, which I really think extends the ethos of building product at Twitch. Okay, so that's enough about what I do now. I think what's the more hopefully interesting story is my path to product management and the things I learned along the way. And I think, you know, Boromir here really kind of sums it up, where one does not simply become a product manager. There's often twists and turns and different places you can go. But at the same time, being a product manager is a title, but it's also just a way of doing things. And in a lot of ways, anybody can be a product manager the day they say that, hey, I'm a product manager now. So let's talk about the experience. Okay, before I start, quick question. Who here loves Jurassic Park? I really wish I'd see more hands here, but like, you know, I can understand it. Well, so my path to product management began when I was 7 years old and Jurassic Park came out, which may sound really, really weird. So I was obsessed with Jurassic Park, more specifically obsessed with Jurassic Park action figures. I had them all, like all the dinosaurs and the people and the buildings, but while most kids my age wanted to, you know, have them tear each other apart in battle, I was obsessed with building the perfect Jurassic Park and building a great customer experience. So literally for like the whole summer of like my 7 to 8-year-old year, I'm in the corner of my backyard building this park and focusing on all these different customer scenarios and trying to think through, okay, how would they do this and how would they do that? But I got in a lot of trouble because I really thought a waterfall would be really critical. And when I flooded my backyard a couple of times, my mom kind of put a stop to it. I would like to think that, I said I was a product manager back then. Well, I may not have said product manager, but that's where it started. But then a few things changed. So when I went to college, my days of Jurassic Park long forgotten. I was really focused actually on something totally different. I wanted to be a doctor. More specifically, I wanted to be Patch Adams. So while I was going to Tufts, I was pre-med and I was actually also a drama major. And my dream was, hey, I'm going to be a pediatrician. I'm going to help kids, not only help them get better, but I'm going to make them laugh and improve their quality of life. Well, I learned a couple things. First, I really hated pre-med classes. I really thought, I liked the idea of being a doctor, but when I actually got to the practice of it, I was like, wow, that's not really for me. But the one thing I did continue with was acting. So that is a picture of me acting, and people are acting like they're enjoying my acting. The problem was, I was not very good. And I, as much as I had fun acting in college and I built some great experiences, I learned pretty well on that, I would not be on Broadway. I would not even be in a tiny regional theater in Jersey. So I had to probably do something different. So I'm like, okay, well, how can I participate? How can I add value? So I got into directing. More specifically, I got into directing film. So I started filmmaking in college, and I loved it because it let me help control all aspects of the story that I was trying to tell. Because I realized throughout the thread of my interest, it was always about how can I affect somebody emotionally? How can I take them along on a journey? And either as a doctor making someone laugh, as an actor playing their part, but as a director being able to influence all those different parts and help lead a team of people to accomplish this objective. By the way, this movie is about a series of rival tour guides doing battle, and believe it or not, it's a comedy, despite it looking pretty dark and grim. It was also terrible, but that's besides the point. But anyways, my filmmaking actually got me so interested that I actually interned on several Hollywood projects, interning the first time on 27 Dresses, which is this old Katherine Heigl rom-com about a woman who's always a bridesmaid, but never a bride. Until the end, of course. Sorry, spoiler alert. The fun thing about that was I literally had to talk my way to be an unpaid intern in their office and drive every time, I think, it was driving from Boston to Rhode Island where they were filming. So it was about an hour and 15-minute drive every morning and night to grind in the office, unpaid. They finally let me get on set, and I hustled my ass off. One thing I will say, I am really good at getting coffee for people. I promise you, if I get you coffee, it will blow your mind. But yeah, I grinded on set for about 6 more weeks, unpaid, and this is 120-hour weeks. That's the one really big positive of this is even if I have to crunch at work, it's never going to be as bad as that. But anyways, they finally started paying me, and it was just a really fun experience. But as I was doing it, I'm like, wow, this is interesting, but where do I want to go with this? I want to be a director, I want to make movies, but one thing I learned is the path for being a PA, it didn't work. Usually what you had to do is work for 600 days, and you slowly worked your way up a totally different chain. And I had to kind of take a step back and look at about what was important to me, what did I want to do, and then necessarily make a change. And the change that I made, well, it wasn't really chosen because I was graduating in 2008 with a degree in drama. So I'm sure you're all thinking, wow, that must be a really actionable, valuable degree that Greg had no problem getting a job. Well, the job that it got me was at an Apple store. Literally, after applying to tons of different places, the one place that it got me in was teaching old ladies how to use their computer at an Apple store. And it's funny because I actually look back on this, even though I was making, I think, $15,000 a year and having to, move back to my parents' house and by the way, this is the mall where I used to go as a teenager. And so my big grand homecoming was going back and working at the mall. And also, fun side note, this picture I Googled, it was just I Googled Apple Store, and I think I'm actually in that picture, which is kind of terrifying actually right now, because I recognize all these people, or at least I hope it's back when I was there. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. So I'm there for a while, and then out of the blue, I get this call from my buddy from college. He's like, Greg, will you come to Vegas with me in a couple weeks? I need you to go to a jewelry trade show. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is this? So it turns out, so I was the best man at his wedding, and I gave the toast. It turns out that his wife, the bride, her sister was the CEO of this tiny jewelry manufacturing company based in Michigan. And apparently I said the right things in the toast. Honestly, I don't even remember what I said. that they were interested enough for me to come out and actually talk to me about potentially working for them. And of course, you don't turn down a trip to Vegas, even under the worst circumstances. So I ended up at this tiny company called Bellezza Design. Now, just to be clear, I know nothing about jewelry. I worked at this company for a while and I still don't know anything about jewelry. So I don't think it really sunk in very well. But I was able to learn a number of great things about sales, about marketing, about account management. And the cool thing was the CEO was a former management consultant, and her whole shtick was leveraging technology to have one person do the work of 300 people. Because if you're not familiar, the jewelry industry is actually very, very inefficient despite having massive margins. Like a retail margin is usually like a 5 times markup of like what they even pay for wholesale. So that like $10,000 ring you might have is probably like cost them $2,000, and to manufacture it probably cost maybe like $900. So there's huge, huge margins to grab if you can be disruptive, and that's what she was trying to do. But ultimately, as I was moving through there, I'm like, I'm learning, I'm growing, but it didn't really like speak to me. I wanted to get back on that journey of telling stories for people and helping them. So I decided to go work at a wine bar. Now, to be fair, the wine bar was more about not the work itself, but it was about buying time. It was about, I realized I needed to take a step back and realize, what do I want to do and what is the path that I take to that? And the startup was giving me a lot of experience, but I was also working a lot. And I realized the most valuable resource for me right now is time. And ironically, I think I actually made more money at the wine bar than I did at the startup, in this tiny wine bar in Ann Arbor. But eventually I worked through what my dream was and what I wanted to do, and I ended up going to a tiny school in Pennsylvania called Penn, where I worked. I was in a program called MCIT, which if you haven't heard of it, it's super groovy. It's a place where you can get a computer science degree or a master's in computer science if you didn't have an undergrad background in it. So that's what they specialize in. Like my classmates were everything from English majors to scientists to philosophers. I think I was the only drama major, so I like to think I got in, for diversity reasons. But eventually, after kind of working through that a little bit, I managed to get myself an internship at Xbox. Weird thing about this, I started interviewing for this 2 weeks after I started at Penn. So I'm having to answer these coding questions when I had been studying computer science for like 2 weeks. And it still flabbergasted me how they managed to ask me like the one thing I knew. And other interesting thing, my final round interviews there were on Halloween in Redmond. And a bunch of my interviewers were in costume. So like imagine like going through a behavioral interview with someone dressed as a drill sergeant, just like peppering you with questions. It was ridiculous. But yeah, so I interned there. I ended up taking an offer to come back the following year to launch the Xbox One, which is the picture of us right there. I think New Zealand had just launched, and we'd probably been drinking for several hours. And we had a pretty good time there. Eventually, I was at Xbox for over 4 years, and in my third year, I worked on acquiring a small company called Beam, which they're not called Beam anymore, they're called Mixer now. This was Microsoft trying to launch its own competitive broadcasting company to Twitch, focused around enabling users to get closer to the gaming experience by interacting with the broadcast as it happens. Some fun things about that, the two founders of that company, I think, were 18 years old and 20 years old respectively. So, I mean, I'm not old, but holy shit, I felt so old working with them because they just come in, they're super smart guys. And even like the whole team was pretty much all like 18, 19, and like 22. Like the guy who was like 22 was like their most senior employee, I feel like, at that point. But it was a really, really cool experience. But ultimately, as I was kind of stepping back and thinking about what I wanted to do, it was about how can I build experiences that help communities connect with each other and not just watch and not just talk, but actually work together. And that's when I ended up taking the opportunity at Twitch. I've been kind of chatting with them for a while, and I know them from way back working with them at Xbox. But they talked to me about this product called Extensions, the one I was just telling you about, where it's all about how do we empower folks to build these new experiences that bring people together. And while we focused on games, and there's a few different extensions now, what got me excited is things like education, things like politics. How can you make someone watch actively and participate actively and be able to deliver targeted experiences to them? And that's ultimately what got me at Twitch in my current role as a product manager. Okay, so obviously, I'm able to click through a bunch of slides and show a bunch of pictures and show spots, I guess, in my roadmap or my journey. But along the way, there were a lot of stories and a lot of lessons and a lot of times that I screwed up. But what makes me thankful about that is those screw-ups, I think, are the things that propelled me forward to actually grow into the product manager that I am today. So we're going to talk about some stories. The first story is called Diamonds Are Hard. Yes?
Sorry Sorry, can you just, what was your first job at Xbox?
So I was a program manager. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So at Xbox, they don't call them. They do have some product managers, but it's more on the marketing side. Program manager is the title. It's kind of a combination of what product managers do, but much more on the execution side. And my title was program manager throughout. I do kind of think that around like year 3, I really transitioned into what I would consider a product manager to be in terms of the role I was taking on strategy, being more data driven, and that's also when the acquisition happened. But early on, it was much more execution focused. But that's also why I got away with the coding questions, because if I was a dev, that never would have happened. They would have laughed me out of the room like as soon as I started whiteboarding. Okay, let's talk about story 1, about diamonds are hard. So if you recall, I was working at the Apple store when I got this kind of crazy opportunity to go to Vegas and to interview at a jewelry company. And some additional details that are relevant. So while I was at the Apple store, I was busting my butt because it was my job, and putting in the hours. And at that point, when I was getting this opportunity, Apple was looking to put me on a manager track, which when you're making like $15,000 a year and they're going to say, hey, you can make $40,000, that seems really good. And it was obviously the much safer path, and it was in a place that I knew. I had friends from college who were still roughly in the area, and it was kind of more of a safe space. And then this offer comes out of nowhere to work in an industry that I know nothing about, to move to a place in the middle of the country where I don't know anybody, and to work in a variety of roles that I've never prepared for. Like, I'd never done sales before, I'd never done marketing, I'd never done account management. But what kind of ultimately made me go through this decision and go to Vegas and eventually choose this, it was like I knew I wanted to get back into entertainment. I knew I wanted to get back into movies or something along those lines, but I didn't have the skills to do so. And I realized that if I continued to go on my current path, I would start building up maybe management experience. I would build some retail experience in a technical field, but it wasn't actually putting me on the path. And I needed to make a lateral move. And while I was only there for about 14 months, the skills that I built there and the mistakes that I made, of which there were many, and they were very, very forgiving, fortunately, of that, it ultimately gave me enough kind of in my portfolio that when I applied to Penn for my program, I was able to offer myself as a diversified enough candidate that I was able to get in. And then at the same time, when I was applying to Microsoft, those skills actually proved to be extremely valuable on my resume. So the first takeaway to really think about here is lateral moves can move you up. And this comes for building product, this comes for career. That if you're looking for a job in product management, sometimes the next job you should take, if you want to be a product manager, isn't actually being a PM. Let's say you're applying, you're kind of running into the wall a little bit. It's possible that there's just areas in your resume or areas in your skill set that there are gaps. And sometimes a really effective move you can make, either in work or in side projects, is that lateral move. Like really trying to understand where are the areas, that when you think of a traditional PM skill set that you don't have. And sometimes even spending 6 months to a year there can really help bolster those and really make you a much more effective candidate to move up. Okay, next one. The story 2 is kind of what do you want in life? So as I was, and by the way, mine eventually was help kids learn good, if you've seen Zoolander. So this is when I was at the end of my time at Bellezza. I'd been there 14 months. I was learning a lot, but I was like, man, this just isn't for me. I don't feel the passion for this. And while I wanted to work hard and learn, I felt like the value I was getting was, while I learned a lot and bolstered my portfolio, I was still going in the wrong direction. So I took a step back. I started working at this wine bar, and I had to think about, okay, what do I do next? Now, given that it was 2008 when I graduated college, a lot of my classmates, they all just went to grad school. Because it's an economic recession. If you don't have very actionable skills, the safest thing you can do is stay in school. And I remember chatting with a bunch of them as they were kind of exiting school, in 2-year programs that would have been out by November 2010. And a lot of them were in the same position they were in before. They went into a program for the wrong reasons. They worked forward. They said, okay, what's the next thing that I do? Which is, oh, maybe I'll go to law school or I'll get my master's in this because that seems good. As I was talking to them, I realized, well, shoot, if I just take the same path, I'm going to be in the same spot that I am right now. I was looking at things like screenwriting courses. I was looking at law school, like maybe I should be an agent. Like I was thinking of all these kind of ways. Yeah, that'd be super weird. But then I had to really kind of work back. And one thing that really helped is actually the CEO of the company, the jewelry company, said, hey, you should make a vision board. And you should kind of put stuff up about things that you care about. And of course, I put up bullshit. I had an island on there. I'm like, that seems cool. I want one of those. all kinds of random stuff. But one of the things I had was that kind of made me think back was a passion for learning and a passion for growing. And kind of thinking back to, why I wanted to be a doctor, why I wanted to be an actor, and why I wanted to tell stories. It was not just to help people have an emotional experience, but to help them grow. And then as I kind of worked back from that, I'm okay, that's the result I want. Well, how can I focus that? Okay, education seems interesting. Okay, how can I improve education? And I thought back to all the times as a nerdy kid playing video games and thinking through why were they so engaging to me? And why learning was engaging to me, why wasn't engaging to some of my classmates? Yet video games seem to be universally engaging. And I broke that down thinking about, okay, well, it's about delivering user agency. It's about designing experiences that scale with difficulty as you get better. It's about failure being okay, and it's about having fun. And then working back from that, I'm like, okay, well then how can I apply that to learning? How can I deliver this result that I want to have? And I'm like, okay, well great. That sounds good, but I don't have any skills to do that. I didn't know how to make a video game. I had taken one programming class at that one point. I think I bought a little tablet to start drawing, and my drawing is just garbage. It's really bad. If a psychologist saw it, they'd be like, dude, you might have a problem. But I'm like, okay, I need to build skills. But before I can build them, I have to learn them. And then as I thought through what is the most useful skill for me to actually execute on this, I realized it was computer science. And working back from that is okay, well, I probably can't get into a master's program because I have one programming class. So they'll probably eat me alive if they even let me in. And that allowed me to actually focus my search, where I ended up at the program at Penn, which, the one that I told you about, was literally focused on you probably made a bunch of mistakes in undergrad and didn't study computer science. Now you should do it. And that's honestly what led me to apply there. But I never ever would have taken that approach. I would have gone in a very, very different direction if I hadn't worked backwards. So I guess the big lesson to kind of take from here is find your destination and work backwards. This talk in this place is about being a product manager and learning to build the skills to be a product manager. But the big thing here is that shouldn't be the end goal. That is actually the means to the goal. So the one thing I would challenge everybody to think about is, what destination do you want to arrive at? What do you want to do, or what result do you want to drive? And then work back from that. And then to figure out how product management can help you do that. Interestingly, the same way, that's actually how we build product at Twitch. Literally, there's an Amazon kind of tenet about working backwards. We have this whole process where we start with the customer. We really deeply understand what their world is like, what their needs are. And then from determining how do we meet those needs, how do we deliver success, do we finally work back and think about the experience that we're trying to build. So while I kind of stumbled upon this with my Sweet Island vision board, it's actually just a great way to approach things, not just your career or your work as a product manager, but just even things in life. Right now I'm trying to plan a wedding. And believe it or not, my fiance and I went through a working backwards exercise on our wedding where we thought about the different customers, and it's really ridiculous, and our needs. And honestly, I think we're still going to prioritize our needs more than our grandparents necessarily. But it was really interesting because we were able to determine what was important to us and really what we viewed success as. So it's actually kind of a really nerdy but useful process. Okay, let's talk about story number 3. It's called Greg's Intern Project. So the reason why I have the picture of the internship is I didn't work at Google, but I just felt really, really old because I was in graduate school at that point, and I think I was 25 or 26, and all my coworker interns were 20. So while I still felt young and hip, they would say things sometimes of oh my God, I don't even know what you're talking about. It's really bad news. But obviously worked on Team Xbox. We have lots of Xbox spirit. But the real thing is the project itself. So my first day, and by the way, I was super stoked that I even got into Xbox. I thought it was ridiculous that they decided to hire me. So anyways, I get there my first day. So this is 2012, summer of 2012. I go into my new manager's office, and he kind of comes in and he shuts the door kind of dramatically. He says, Greg, you should sit down. I'm like, okay. He points to the corner, and there's this kind of dark, malevolent shape there. He's like, Greg, do you know what that is? I'm like, well, no. He's like, that's the next Xbox, and you're going to work on it. And I'm like, holy shit. This is the coolest thing ever. As a video gamer my whole life, I was going to get to design experiences on this brand new, unreleased secret project that was going to delight gamers everywhere. And I'm like, oh man, think of all the things I'm going to do. And I'm like, what's the project? What's the project? He's like, actually, you're not going to work on it. You're going to build an onboarding tool. And I was like, fuck. I'm not going to lie. I kind of came in there thinking I was hot shit, which is side lesson, really remove your ego from the situation because it really just makes you do dumb things. But I was crushed. I was like, man, this Xbox is right here and I'm building an onboarding tool. So the goal that they had was they had a bunch of engineers that needed to move over to start working on the Xbox what became the Xbox One, and they were working on 360, and it was a little bit different, and they wanted to do it as efficiently as possible. And I'm like, great, so you're going to have me spend my summer building this tool that's going to get thrown away a month later. Like, this is a giant waste of my time. Like, and I started thinking about, can I get on a different team? Can I do something different? Like, this is not what I want. Again, this is my ego being ridiculous. But that first week, as I started talking to my kind of fellow interns and asking them about their experiences, they shared stories of like, man, it's really intimidating here. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm not making any progress. I don't know how I'm going to contribute. I feel underwater. And that really kind of struck me as I started to think about, like, the opportunity he was giving me actually was not to build something to, help a bunch of experienced devs learn a new code base. It was, how do you welcome someone to an organization and deliver a personalized experience that made them feel special, made them feel wanted, and made them feel like they could, move forward with a sense of progress. And where you could deliver information that was directly relevant to them, as opposed to sorting through what we call the fire hose, or trying to track down the one random person who knew the one fact that you needed. So kind of taking a step back and realizing this, it totally changed my approach to the project. With this opportunity, I started working weekends. I built like a usability lab in the empty office next to me, and really looking at ways that I could deliver an experience that wasn't just great for Xbox, but that was great for anybody in the company. That any team, any organization, any role, any level of experience could be tuned to a specific individual and help them just have a magical experience. Like, imagine getting to your computer for the first day, clicking a button, and suddenly you have all the software you need. You have all the code you need. You have all the documentation that is perfectly suited to you, and you know where all the resources are. And as you go and as you move through, you have a sense of progress. Well, that's what we ended up building. And what was awesome is I got to present this to our VP at the end of my internship. And what originally was going to be a tool that was going to probably be thrown away a week after I left, it actually became the tool that all of Microsoft uses. I actually came back the next year, and they literally had a team of engineers and like full-time PM, like just working on that, which kind of blew my mind. Except when I saw it, like I saw my old designs, I'm like, oh god, those are terrible. I can fix those. And like I had to like actually step back from it. But the real big takeaway here is that make the opportunities for yourself. There are opportunities everywhere. It's just all about how can you identify them. I think back to my former CEO at Bellezza. She saw the opportunity of the jewelry industry, not having any affinity for technology and having giant margins, so she went there. In my case, the opportunity was, I have an opportunity to help all new employees or even people moving around at Microsoft to feel a part of their team and to be effective as fast as possible. And ultimately, the work that I did there, I was able to negotiate a move to the team that I really wanted to get on the strength of that project. But yeah, the big thing is look for opportunities because they're everywhere. A lot of times it's just uncovering them. Okay, so story 4. This is when I was at Microsoft in my first year as a PM. Like I would still say I was a program manager. I wasn't a product manager yet, but this was my first big project. So that summer was a summer that Halo was starting to release its next-gen Xbox game. And their EP came down to me. He's like, hey, Greg, we have this crazy idea for something called the Halo Channel. It's going to be a multimedia experience that is a companion to all of your Halo stuff with, movies by like Steven Spielberg and like crazy stuff. And he's like, what we want you to do, Greg, is, people are really into this thing called Twitch. And this is like back in 2013. So this is 2014. So this is pre-Amazon acquisition. Twitch was still pretty small, but we wanted to make a magical Halo experience. We want Halo to be discoverable better than anything. Since the way people usually discover broadcasters on Twitch is you find someone you like just kind of by browsing around, or maybe your friend told you about the channel, but it was all about, do I know this person or do I don't? Or maybe I know the game they're playing. And kind of the idea was, well, what if we actually let the game send real-time data for what's actually happening in the broadcast and allow users to search off of that? So in their scenario, I could look for a broadcast where someone was playing Team Slayer on a specific map, and I could sort it by how good the person was. It was like, how can I find the best person playing Halo right now? And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'm Greg the tiny, PM who gets this opportunity. So, I gathered my engineering team together and we're like, we're going to do this. Eventually, we decided to not just focus on Halo, but see how we could do this with all of Xbox and deliver this universally by building this into Twitch as well, because we had a great partnership then. So we worked the whole summer. We built this crazy complex engineering experience. I go to all the games that fall. I'm like, give me your data. We're going to make this awesome thing. I'm getting on the phone with all of them. We released to this big marketing blitz in 2014. And by all accounts, you'd think it was successful. And it was actually not at all. I would call it a huge failure. So a couple weeks after we shipped, I go start looking at our metrics and our service logs. And I noticed our TPS, or like our requests per second, was like 1 or 2, which is not indicative of a product that's being used. And we dug even further, and outside of like a couple streams, like no one was discovering it, no one was using it. And the big thing here is we built this really beautiful, technically executed solution that was marketed, that at least internally met customer needs, except the one thing we failed to do was actually validate that it worked with real customers, and we were actually solving a problem for them. So it's kind of funny because, by some accounts, and especially at that point when I was at Microsoft, the big thing that PMs did was you shipped. You got stuff out the door and you got it to customers, and that was what success meant. But it really wasn't. Because you can ship all you want, and it's an important step, but if you're not actually solving a problem and delivering a result, like, it doesn't matter. And while we were able to take data, from that and inform future decisions, finding ways to maybe get different data or tag different things, ultimately the thing we could have done first, or we should have done first, and I'll put this on myself, but everyone else too, is we should have actually gone out and figured out, hey customers, is this something you want? Or is this just something cool that we could do? So really the thing here is embrace failure, and embrace failure fast with a growth mindset. Because if we had gone in June, the summer before, and actually done some testing, we would have figured out pretty quickly that our approach was not correct, or the way we were making it discoverable wasn't correct, or it wasn't meeting a need. And the great thing is this has really stayed with me a long time, and my goal here is to push things as fast as possible and to learn as fast as possible. But one thing about this actually really helped me recently at Twitch. So 3 weeks into my time at Twitch, I'm a brand new senior product manager at Twitch. I have my executive roadmap review. It's our first one. And it's like, with all the executives of the company, most of the product team is there, and it went terribly. Like, it was bad. Like, oh my God, it was rough. And I'm coming home from that, I'm like, shit, like, I've lost all credibility. Like, I'm a terrible product manager. Like, this went about as bad as it possibly could have gotten. And then I actually took a step back and kind of thought about some of these lessons that I learned, and I realized, no, this is actually a giant success because I failed fast. I embraced failure, and I learned very quickly, 3 weeks in, before engineers had written code, before we had written specs, that this was the wrong direction and this was not the right strategy to take. And we were actually very lucky to have that review then, because we could have had a review 4 months later while we were already underway building things. We would have wasted a bunch of resources, valuable engineering time to build something that wasn't right. And getting that feedback fast was really valuable. So it's not about failure, it's about learning. Okay, so the last lesson. So again, all about the memes right now, and one of my colleagues, brought this one back to my attention. So this story is called Using Your Secret Weapons. So, drama major in an economic depression, not really the most useful thing. And it's funny, I remember graduating from college and feeling like I fell off the train. Everyone is on this train, moving forward in life, moving forward in their careers, getting jobs, moving to new cities, and I moved back to my parents' house and worked at a mall. Like, it was the ultimate, like, my drama major, despite, my love of working with folks and of acting, with directing, it was a weight around me. I was applying to tons of places every week and no one took me seriously. Like, oh, you're a drama major, or whatever, like, you don't actually add any value. And, and for a while it was really, really challenging, but as I kind of moved through my career, I realized it actually wasn't a weight, it was a weapon, or a secret weapon. But not really a weapon, because you don't really hurt people with drama. But as I started to move through, I realized it could actually give me a big advantage, as long as I bolstered it with other skills. And that was also partly, when I went to Penn and to grad school, I started to sell myself as, I'm not this guy with a drama major. I'm now a slightly technical person who also has a drama major. And it made it actually very useful and a different conversation starter. And it's funny, throughout my time, even during my internship at Microsoft, remember that whole intern project I talked to you about? Well, the thing that actually I think really sold it for me was the weekend before I had to give my presentation, I realized I had a big opportunity. Because most of the time interns presenting to the VPs, it's just, whatever intern project I did, they probably rehearsed it like once or twice. And I said, no, I'm going to Steve Jobs the shit out of this. I sneak my way onto campus, somehow into the theater, and I start practicing. I didn't wear the turtleneck, like I stopped there. But because of that, I was able to give this highly polished product presentation that was articulate, and at least from my perspective, I got their attention, I think, a lot more than if I had just kind of shuffled through it. And I think that's what also got the attention of other executives, and how I was able to actually move it through the rest of the company. But more importantly, doing it that way gave me the ability to negotiate that move onto the team that I really wanted to get on, because I'd been trying to get their attention like throughout the summer and I wasn't really being successful about it. But by leveraging the drama major and leveraging that ability to talk, that was my secret weapon. And it's funny, I even used that recently. So last year I was at GDC when I was still working at Xbox presenting about interactivity and building interactivity. So this whole talk is about, blah, 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 here's what we're doing on Mixer. And then the middle part was going to be a demo where I was going to jump into Unity. I was going to start like real-time coding, all these crazy interactive integrations in like 10 minutes, and people were going to be like, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing I've ever seen. So I do my talk. At the 20-minute mark, I click the switch to switch to the demo machine, and it just breaks. And like not just like breaks, like literally the TV just starts like spazzing out. And I'm just like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. And I'd practiced it, I'd gone through multiple technical rehearsals, like that shit worked, except it didn't. So I'm standing there in front of like 100 people being like, oh my God, like I literally like the rest of my talk is this demo, like I have nothing to talk about. And yes, I did want to kind of curl up on the floor and kind of die a little bit, but believe it or not, the drama major actually saved my butt because I was able to stay on my feet and kind of improv essentially through the next 10 minutes as techs are scrambling around me, trying to, reorient the cables. And eventually I had to write code looking at a screen that was at my feet, which was interesting and unique. But again, it was because of my secret weapon that I was able to carry through. And really the big thing here is use your background to your advantage. Obviously drama was mine, but the big thing here is everybody here has a different background. They have different secret weapons, and really focus on that. Like product managers, they're not made in factories. It is important to leverage educational opportunities to build skills, but at the end of the day, you're building products for real people. And you should focus on what makes you unique and what can differentiate you as a product manager. Maybe you're actually excellent at math and you're analytical, like double down on that. Or maybe you're just really, really good at influencing people in collaboration. Build a narrative around that and really focus on how you can multiply the work of yourself by your coworkers. And this can be applied not just in product management, but in your current roles right now and your other projects. It really, at the end of the day, is all about taking what's unique about you and using that. Okay, so I think I have like 3 minutes left, so kind of on time still. So 5 takeaways that you should use as a PM. Lateral moves can move you up. Again, your next job doesn't have to be a PM job. It can be another job that will actually accelerate you a lot farther. The next one, find your destination and work backwards, not just in how you build product, but in where you want to go and what results you want to achieve. The next one is make opportunities for yourself. They exist everywhere. A lot of the time it's just slowing down enough to observe them. And sometimes when you need to shed your ego, because sometimes opportunities are disguised. The next one is embrace failure with a growth mindset. Like failing is great, and the faster you can get used to failing, because obviously as I've shared, I failed a bunch of times during this path, but when you can embrace it and learn and grow quickly, being the big thing, it really helps you go faster. And the last one, using your background to your advantage. Again, focusing on what is unique about you and really doubling down on that. And then just a couple things you can do now if you're not a PM, or just things that I usually give as advice. The first thing is look at opportunities to build your skill set. It can be in your current job, it can be in another job, but honestly, this is a networking event. Network with other people around here. Go find some devs, build an app, build a product, volunteer with a nonprofit to try to help them out. The great thing here is when you're interviewing for a PM job, at least when I interview people, I'm asking them, about situations they've been in to test things like, can they experiment to decide? Do they have good product sense? Are they analytical? And while a lot of folks give stories about, their own work experience, it doesn't have to be. Like if you have a whole side gig, building apps to help, kids find the right school, like that's an awesome experience to talk about. And you can do that today. The next thing is, again, look at your own background and your journey. So it's not just what you know now, but what you've experienced in the past, because that ultimately shapes you. And make that part of your narrative. I feel like sometimes when I talk to people who want to be PMs is everyone wants to kind of be cookie cutter, like, oh, I'm the product manager. No, it's like you're you. And like that is what differentiates you, and that's what makes you special. And the last thing too is, if you're struggling, like write about how you're feeling. I remember doing this when I was working at the Apple Store and working in Michigan. And I spent a bunch of time writing it down, and honestly, it has been the most useful thing, because whenever I try to get too big for my britches, I go and I read it and I'm like, oh shit, I remember that. And it's really helpful because it grounds you, and it also makes you appreciate not just where you are, but how far you've come. And it's definitely something really helpful to do. But anyways, that is actually, I think, the time that I have. Oh my God, it's 7:29 and 54 seconds. I just crushed this timing. But anyways, thank you all so much for coming. I hope you got a little bit of value out of this, and I'd love to open the room up to questions. So thank you.